Well, hello, hello, hello. All right, guys, here what we're going to do today. Today we are talking about substitution. Again, this is something that we think you've already learned, but you also this one is a little different because the your shop class, the CTE classes have asked us to go over this because they see you guys struggling with this in their class. So pay attention because some of the formulas we're going to put in here are from science or CTE. So your seventh grade, two of your other seventh grade classes have asked us to go over this. So you want to pay close attention to this because this is how you're gonna use some of these formulas in those classes. So take notes on this so you know how. Okay, that's going to help you in those classes as well as ours. Okay, here we go. Okay, so before we get started, let's talk about this. Do you know how celebrities stay so cool? Hmm? Yeah, they have lots of fans. Okay, so let's look at this. First of all, what you need to know is these variables. You're going to need to know these variables in some of your other classes. Like these two, I know these three, I know are going to be in your CTE class, and I know these two are going to be in your science class. So you want to understand these things, but you also want to understand the formulas that are going with it. So, like example one, this is something that comes straight out of your CTE class. This is the formula that they asked us to make sure we went over with you. These two formulas, especially. Okay. So this is velocity. We look over here. We have the variables. Velocity equals time times gravity, the force of gravity, right? The force of gravity is 9.8 meters per second squared. Okay, so then time equals 12 seconds. So in other words, if it's flying for 12 seconds, how much velocity is it going? If it's being pulled down, if it's coming down for 12 seconds, from the top when it was at zero, when the velocity was zero, and it's coming down for 9.8 meters per second squared, and it's traveling 12 seconds, what's the velocity? So we're going to plug it in. So we're going to write the variables out, fill in the gaps. So we're saying that gravity, the time is 12 seconds. So here we have time. That's going to be 12. All right. And that's going to be, and then, so that's going to be 12 seconds, right? Times, and then 9.8 meters per second squared. So that's going to be 9.8 meters per second squared. Now, I'm not going to mess with much with the units, but I could show you a little bit. This is going to be 12 times, let's just S, times 9.8 meters over second squared. So we're going to be able to simplify that because S divided by S is 1, right? They simplify. And so we're going to be talking about meters per second. That's not the most important part. The most important part is you have to multiply 12 times 9.8. So calculate that out, and then you have your answer. So when you calculate that, that's going to be 117.6 meters per second. So the most important thing to me right now is that you know how to plug this in, put in the values, substitute them in. I wouldn't worry about units yet, and that you can do 12 times 9.8. And that 12 times 9.8 is 117.6. And then you'll have to ask your shop teachers or CTE if they care that much about that you're doing meters per second. Now, by the time you're in 8th and ninth grade, it's going to be pretty important that you understand that. But I'm not going to take the time here to teach you that. I did a little bit here to show you. If that doesn't make sense, just know that I'm more concerned that you know to plug it in 12 times 9.8, and that this really is something your CTE teachers and your science teachers asked us to go over with you. Now, this is another formula. You can look over here. D equals distance, R equals rate, and T, of course, equals time. So Usain Bolt can draw. And again, remember we talked about in class was you've got to look for the question. and that's the question mark. So we're going to go back as somebody, and you're going to look at the sentence that's attached to that question mark. And we want to know, if he runs at the same rate, how far will he go in 15 seconds? Well, 15 seconds is a time. So we're going to look at this and say, here's our time, the rate, right? If he goes in 15 seconds, that's time. The rate is 10.44 meters per second. The formula, again, is that we have distance equals the rate times the time, right? So our time is 15 seconds. Our rate was 10.44 meters per second, and the time is 15 seconds. So that's going to put 10.44 meters times 15 seconds over seconds. So we're done with seconds, right? And this is equal to the distance. So now we just multiply 10.44 times 15, which comes out that you're then therefore going to go 156.6 meters. So if we're answering that question, okay, so I'm going to look at this, and when we get to story problems, I'm going to tell you that if it asks you a question in sentence form, which is what this is, you have to answer in sentence form. But really, you're just going to copy down the question. Because it says, if he runs at the same rate, how far will he go in 15 seconds? You're going to just put the how far, you're going to plug in 156.6. So you could just write, if he runs at the same rate, he will travel 156.6 meters in 15 seconds. So you'd write that out like that. If he runs at the same rate, he will travel 156.6 meters in 15 seconds. Okay? You could even say he will travel. I mean, that's the complete sentence. That's what you really want for your answer, because that says you know what you found, not just that you came up with a number. You know now that he traveled 156.6 meters in 15 seconds. If you just wrote it out that, he will travel, just stop it right there. If you put it right there and you put this part in here as the answer, that's answering in a complete sentence form. I'll accept that because that tells me you know what you're doing. All right. So, of course, I just thought of something. You know why melons have weddings? Yeah, because they cantaloupe. Okay, good. So let's move on. Let's look at this one, area of a triangle. Again, the gist of this is, look, you have a formula. Now, when I write this out in class, you'll see me an awful lot of times just write it out like this, that the area of a triangle, okay, A stands for area, equals the base times the height divided by 2. That's when we understand you're already supposed to know. But in class, most of the time we see you don't. So make sure you write that down. Make a flashcard out of it. Get it so it's part of your brain, so you remember it. But now they gave us the base and the height. So all we have to do is say, well, the area of the triangle equals, and we already said it was going to be the base times the height divided by 2. And that means we're going to plug in 15, and the height is 4 times 4 divided by 2, which is going to be 60 divided by 2, which means it's going to be 30. Now, remember, and we didn't put units here, but we probably, no matter what, it's going to be unit squared. So if this was inches and this was inches, we'd say 30 inches squared. Area is always going to be in square units. Okay? So it's 30 inches squared. That's how you do that. So look at that, and then, I mean, this is all you're doing with it. We'll do some more problems in class. We'll come up with some other ones. These are the two. This is the one that's the hardest for students to grab. So you want to, if you don't get this, ask questions in class, okay? Because this one is the hardest. This is the one the science class wants you to know. You've got to be able to convert from Celsius to Fahrenheit and Fahrenheit to Celsius. Notice what we're doing with this. We are finding Celsius. That means we start out with the temperature in Fahrenheit. Okay, that's what we have right here is the Fahrenheit. So if we have Fahrenheit, this is the formula to find Celsius. There's another formula if you have Celsius, how you find Fahrenheit. Okay, but we're going to use this. Okay, so we're going to look at the problem. First of all, we know we're going to use this formula when we read the question. So right now, underline the question. Let's see if you know what the question is. Go ahead. Okay, so just to make sure you do know what we're talking about, oops. So if we're going to do that, it's right here. We look for that question mark, and then we're just going to go back to that next. We're just going to keep going back until we get a capital letter where it starts, right? So the question is, if the temperature in Utah is 98 degrees Fahrenheit, what would the temperature be in Celsius? Okay, so we're going to copy the formula down. And the thing is these two numbers here are called constants. The 5/9 and the 32, subtracting 32, those are constants. They're in that formula always. You're always going to see them in there, okay? Now we got to go and look and see, well, what did we say the degree Fahrenheit was? It was 98 degrees Fahrenheit. So we're going to just substitute the 98 in place of the Fahrenheit. That's all we're doing. We're saying that we're going to have this equals 98 minus 32 times the 5/9, right? And then, of course, 98 minus 32 equals 66, right? So we could have picked a number that would have been a little bit better with this, but so it's going to be 66. And I'm going to teach you a few things in class, but when you look at this, you take 66 times 5, right? Because this is going to be 66 over 1. So you're going to multiply, if you're multiplying a fraction, you're going to take 66 times 5 over 9. Now, so if you do the long multiplication of 66 times 5, you're going to take 60. I'm going to write it out like this. See if you get what I'm doing here. 60 plus 6 times 5. That means I'm going to have 60 times 5, which is 300. And 6 times 5 is 30. This is going to be 330 over 9. Okay, and then I can do the division there, or I could also look at it and say, oh, I have 3 times 110 over 3 times 3. Simplify that 3 because 3 divided by 3 is 1. But, you know, that's something. If we just take 330 divided by 9, if you put that in a calculator, you get 36.666666, and then at the end of the calculator, it's going to say 7. That's basically 2/3. So that's 36 and 2/3. All right. So you'd say it would be 98 degrees Fahrenheit would be 36.2.67 or 6 repeated degrees Celsius. That's how you would write it out. But that's what you would get. You would simplify this by just saying this is 36.6 repeated degrees Celsius. Okay? Again, all you're doing is substituting in for the value. So they tell us what the Fahrenheit is. We take the formula they give us for finding degrees Celsius, if we know Fahrenheit. We plug it in and simplify. That's what we're doing. You follow order of operations. You have to take care of what's in the parentheses first. Then you multiply the 5/9. This isn't easy, but this is how we do formulas. Now, we're going over this because we want you to know how to do this when you're in your CTE class and when you're in your science class. That's the biggest reason. This is not necessarily part of our core. Okay, this is not part of something we have to teach, but the CTE classes have asked us to teach that. So hopefully you're paying attention. Okay, this last one, this should be the simplest of all of them because it says a box in a shape of a rectangular prism has the following dimensions, right? That's our dimensions, and we just have to find the volume of the box. This is an important one for you to know in our class. You really need to know that formula, okay? You need to know that formula. So we're going to rewrite that formula. And we're just going to find those parts, right? So if we look, they're giving us the length. Where did they find length? We got length here. It says the length of 5 inches. It says that we have width. Width is 8 inches. And the height is 3 inches. And then we're just going to plug those values in. We're going to take 5 inches times 8 inches times 3 inches. So I'm going to rewrite that. I'm going to say, oh, well, that means I have 5 times 8 times 3 times inches times inches times inches. So that means I have inches cubed. And 5 times 8 times 3, that's going to be 40 times 3, which is 120. So the volume would be 120 inches cubed. That's it. That's it. So now you're looking at that. You're just hopefully you're thinking of questions. Maybe you don't understand something we did, and so it's you're going to have questions, but this is stuff you're going to have to do in other classes. So we're looking forward to do that. Hey, do you know what the fisherman what the fisherman said to the magician? He said, "Pick a cod, any cod." All right. Well, I'll tell you what, guys. I'll see you in class. Enjoy this. Hope you took some good notes. Hope you're bringing some good questions. Talk to you later. Have a great day.